Nobody survived that training. He came out of it stronger than the man who put him through it. 1 week earlier, he was just a stranger in a foreign body. No allies, no power, no idea where he was. Then a master found him, and what came next wasn't training. It was survival. Bound to trees, bitten daily, dragged through snow barefoot with weights on his back. While every other disciple broke or ran, he kept getting up. Until the man training him couldn't keep up anymore. This is the story of how a man with nothing became the most dangerous fighter in the entire realm. Drop a like if you're already hooked, and subscribe so you don't miss our next manhwa recap. A towering structure burns amid widespread flames and smoke under a twilight sky choked with embers. A monstrous beast with jagged fangs roars violently as flames and embers erupt around it in a chaotic burst of fury. A massive claw slams down onto a figure in white armor, crushing them against the ground while 2 armored figures leap away from the impact zone. Armored warriors brace on the city ramparts as colossal, horned beasts roar amidst raging fire and smoke, looming over the burning skyline. A bearded commander in ornate armor stands behind an elf with pointed ears, reporting that 200,000 died from the wide-range magic attack and summoning, and 300,000 were injured. Heroes stand with banners raised against a fiery sky, declaring that the Demon King brought ruin but will die at their hands as true heroes. An ornate domed ceiling glows with soft blue light, its intricate carvings and star-speckled vault radiating serene grandeur. A blonde knight in ornate armor shouts with fierce intensity, his blue eyes blazing and mouth wide open as if declaring a challenge or command. A group of warriors stands with their backs turned, facing a dark figure seated on a distant throne within a grand hall illuminated by blue light, as an unseen voice declares that it is time for the evil king to return to the dark. The emperor of the Antares Empire rests his chin on his fist with a smug, confident smirk while narrowing his eyes in quiet amusement. A bearded man in blue and gold armor grips a glowing sword crackling with lightning, roaring that he will bring an end to the history of this dark empire, his face twisted in furious resolve. A man with long dark hair and a red coat rests his chin on his fist, his expression stern and thoughtful under cool blue lighting. Tessin, the martial king, roars with rage as golden energy surges around his bandaged fists and bare torso. A man with long black hair and a confident smirk stares forward while spectral figures of screaming warriors surge behind him, radiating dark energy. A man with long dark hair and a red robe sits rigidly on a throne, his body tense and eyes wide as he demands to know who dared approach him. A towering shirtless man with spiky pink hair stands rigidly as a bearded armored figure grips his shoulder, while a robed woman and another youth look on in tense silence beneath crackling blue energy. A monstrous fanged beast looms overhead with a grotesque grin while a long-haired man screams in terror below, his face contorted and eyes wide with dread. The muscular man with tusks grins broadly while gripping his staff, offering food and shouting that Mr. Reifenhart should have some, as the small green creature behind him looks on in confusion. A muscular man with bandaged arms crosses his chest and grins fiercely against a starry night sky, radiating unshakable confidence. A dark-skinned elf with dreadlocks and birds perched on his head grins menacingly while looming over a weeping figure, as another elf smiles faintly in the background beneath a cloudy sky. Saintess Ellen stands with eyes closed and hands clasped in prayer, her expression serene as starlight drifts around her ornate crown and flowing robes. A figure in red and blue robes slumps forward with hand pressed to their face, whispering that even Mashellen was dead, as faint light sparkles around them like falling ash. Jade Archlight channels golden light magic through his raised hand, forming a glowing orb above him while demanding to know what happened to his magic, his expression strained with urgency and power crackling around him. A blonde character leans close to a terrified dark-haired individual, their expression cold and menacing as they whisper that escape is impossible now. A man with dark hair and a scarred brow screams in fury, his face contorted as purple lightning crackles around him, while shouting that you were nothing. A shadowy figure with glowing anger marks on its back stands before 3 adversaries in a grand hall, while distant voices declare that they give no pity to such creatures and demand surrender to the dark side, filling the air with tense confrontation. A figure in ornate purple and gold robes covers their face with one hand as dark tendrils swirl around them, while a guttural sound echoes through the shimmering void. A golden-armored knight charges forward with a glowing sword, roaring in battle cry as lightning crackles around him, while behind him a robed mage hurls fireballs, a bishop chants with clasped hands, and a bearded warrior grips a radiant blade, all surrounded by swirling energy and divine light. A man with glowing red eyes and dark hair grins wildly while touching his chin, as he asks who then dares to challenge him. A blonde woman with blue eyes screams fiercely while wielding a glowing cyan sword, her mouth wide open in battle cry as magical energy crackles around the blade. A figure with flowing dark hair and a high-collared coat stands amid swirling purple energy, their face obscured as crackling light arcs around them in violent motion. A cloaked figure wielding a glowing blue sword lunges forward through crackling energy toward a purple-robed mage surrounded by dark tendrils, as magical forces collide in the grand hall. A character with long dark hair stands in profile as purple energy swirls violently around them, their expression calm and resolute amidst the chaotic aura. A man in a flowing purple robe screams that he will become the demon king they wish him to be, his body wreathed in crackling dark energy and jagged magical shards as his hair whips wildly around his furious face. A horned figure in red unleashes a surge of dark energy that shatters the ground and sends multiple figures flying backward through the air amidst jagged purple light. A man with wild dark hair and glowing purple eyes weeps silently, tears streaming down his face as streaks of light cut through the air around him, his expression twisted in anguish. A robed mage stands with arms outstretched as glowing purple magic circles erupt around them, their face partially hidden by shadow and arcane light. Two elf women in ornate maid uniforms stand in a grand hall, one holding a feather duster while the other polishes a sconce, as narration explains that elves live long lives. A dwarf strains under heavy mining tools underground, sweat beading on his brow and muscles tensed with effort, while narration states dwarves are slaves skilled with their hands in mining. Two glass bottles containing red liquid float against a plain background, while narration declares orcs are suited for menial work. A cloaked figure stands amidst floating stone ruins as glowing magical sigils hover in the air above, while a narration box states that neither ego nor will remains. A cloaked figure stands among three large, muscular orcs under a cloudy sky, their expressions tense and alert as if bracing for confrontation. A hooded figure holds a glowing orb containing floating rectangular objects while flanked by two horned, muscular beings, one grinning menacingly and the other pointing upward with a smirk. A man with dark hair closes his eyes and raises both hands, while glowing blue magical circles filled with runes and gears swirl around him in a radiant display of arcane power. A robed figure with long black hair stands center stage, arms outstretched and eyes closed in serene confidence, while shadowed figures of monstrous beings loom behind him, grinning or roaring as if under his command. A hooded figure in a red cloak stands calmly amid clashing warriors, while raising one hand as if commanding the battle to halt, sparks flying around them. A hooded figure in red robe sits on a throne with one hand raised, while massive shadowy tendrils coil behind them, and the narration states that something grows in size. A group of armored adventurers raises their weapons toward a towering spire under a bright sky, shouting in unison as they prepare to charge forward with fierce determination. Tall white spires pierce a bright blue sky while birds circle overhead, and an ornate banner frames the scene. A blue-armored warrior collapses onto shattered stone while white energy streaks across the battlefield, as a red flag flutters above crumbling fortifications under smoke-choked skies. A green-skinned goblin snarls with bared teeth and wild eyes as lightning crackles around him, while another goblin lies motionless on the shattered stone behind. A robed mage with flowing black hair channels crackling purple energy from his raised hand, shattering the stone floor around him as jagged rocks levitate in a vortex of magical force. A blonde character screams with wide, furious eyes and bared teeth as purple energy swirls violently around him. A metallic object streaks through the air with explosive force, shattering debris and trailing light as it tears across a violet-hued void. A defeated knight in ornate armor lies collapsed on the ground with a pained expression, while behind him, a shirtless man lunges forward through swirling purple energy toward a distant robed figure. A man with glowing purple eyes and a matching forehead mark sheds tears while surrounded by crackling energy, his expression twisted in anguish as he remains silent. Teslan stands shirtless with clenched fists as golden energy crackles around his body, declaring that only the martial king remains. A shirtless man wreathed in crackling yellow flames stands with clenched fists as debris flies around him, while a robed figure watches from the background and shouts that something is different. A spiky-haired man lunges forward with a furious expression, surrounded by explosive golden energy and crackling lightning as he strikes downward at an unseen opponent below. A figure in dark robes recoils from a blinding golden explosion as another character surges forward through the debris, while declaring that it actually dug just one well. A figure in a red cloak stands with back turned as another character is violently launched backward through the air by a massive explosion of golden energy, shattering stone and sending debris flying amid roaring impact effects. A massive energy blast streaks toward a towering fortress wall, shattering the air with explosive force and sending debris flying as the structure trembles under impact. A man with wild black hair and glowing purple eyes lunges forward in a red cloak, his foot striking the stone floor with explosive force as white energy crackles around him. A character stares with intense focus, their eye wide and unblinking as glowing particles drift through the air around them. A muscular man with red hair leaps through the air with his fist raised, his body wreathed in a glowing aura as he descends upon dark, swirling energy below. A dark-haired mage in purple robes channels crackling energy through outstretched hands, his face contorted in exertion as shadowy tendrils surge around him. A muscular man with a beard and glowing eyes lunges forward with an open palm, roaring as he unleashes a blinding burst of energy that fills the frame. A man grimaces in agony with tears streaming down his face and blood trickling from his mouth as a powerful force strikes the top of his head, sending shockwaves through the air. A red-haired, muscular man with bandaged arms stands roaring that he blocked the attack with magic, his body wreathed in flames as an unseen figure watches from the foreground. A man with wild black hair and a red cloak stands frozen in shock, blood trickling from his mouth as he stares forward with wide, trembling eyes. A robed figure stands atop a crumbling stone wall and demands to send the muscular man below to his judgment, while crackling energy surrounds the warrior's body in preparation for battle. A man in ornate robes flinches with hands pressed to his head, sweat flying as he trembles before a towering silhouette wreathed in golden fire while saying "good for you." A man with spiky hair and glowing golden energy radiating from his shoulder grins sharply while assuming that the others will finally be free of something, his expression edged with cruel anticipation. A character's wide, trembling eye reflects sharp light while a single tear rolls down their flushed cheek, conveying overwhelming emotion. A character grits their teeth in pain or frustration, sweat droplets flying from their face as they endure a sharp, stinging sensation. A robed mage stands amid crackling lightning and burning ruins, his cloak billowing as he shouts that the sky itself will burn for their sins. A man with wild dark hair and glowing eyes grips a cracked spherical artifact that pulses with inner light, his face twisted in fervent intensity as he declares it the eye of time and space found in an ancient ruin, while radiant energy surges around him. A muscular man with a beard and glowing eyes screams in rage, sweat flying from his face as speed lines radiate outward around him. A man with wild hair and a scarred face bares his teeth in a furious snarl, his eyes wide and burning with rage as he glares forward. A warrior radiates blazing energy from his chest, eyes burning with fury as he demands the martial king stop him if they can. A muscular man with spiky red hair leaps forward screaming as he drives his fist downward, shattering the ground below into jagged fragments. A figure in dark robes thrusts forward with glowing energy swirling around their outstretched hand, as flames and light erupt violently from the center of the frame. A man screams in agony as bright energy tears through his body, his face contorted with pain and eyes wide with terror. A man grits his teeth and strains against searing flames that engulf his body, his face contorted in agony as he endures the burning heat. A muscular figure with spiky hair lunges forward mid-strike, muscles tensed and teeth bared in a grimace, as golden energy swirls violently around his body. A figure with long dark hair tilts their head back and screams as jagged streaks of red and white energy crackle around them, filling the air with explosive intensity. A blinding explosion erupts between two vertical structures, sending debris flying outward in a shockwave of light and smoke. Two figures collide midair in a burst of radiant energy, their forms blurred by the force of impact as swirling flames and light erupt around them. A blinding white explosion erupts at the center, shattering surrounding stone and sending debris flying outward in all directions. Two small birds perch on a tree branch under a blue sky, while one chirps with its beak open. A wooden cabin stands in a sunlit clearing with smoke rising from its chimney. White curtains billow gently in the breeze against a wooden wall. A golden eye narrows slightly as a soft glow bathes the surrounding skin, suggesting quiet focus or inner tension. A man's torso is shown with defined abdominal muscles, glistening with sweat droplets under soft lighting, while he murmurs that he knows them. A figure sits on the edge of a bed with their back turned, illuminated by soft morning light filtering through sheer curtains as dust motes drift in the quiet air. A shirtless man with spiky red hair and golden eyes stares forward with a tense, angry expression while gritting his teeth. A log cabin stands alone in a clearing, smoke curling from its chimney into the air. Barefoot slams down hard onto the wooden floorboards. A muscular torso freezes motionless, catching soft light with zero expression on his face. The red-haired man stares forward in pure shock, breath hitching as he demands to know who is standing before him. Barefoot on tiled floors, the red-haired man clenches his fists, struggling to process the sudden change ripping through his body. The pink-haired man freezes in shock while smiling women and ghostly figures loom menacingly behind him. The red-haired man stares at his reflection, clutching his chest and stomach like agony is tearing him apart. The long-haired man grips the red-haired man's throat, realization dawning that this face looks hauntingly familiar. The red-haired man narrows an amber eye with razor-sharp focus, brow furrowed in silent, ironclad determination. Teeth bared in a feral grin, the red-haired man snarls that they need to handle this situation immediately. Side by side with fearful eyes, the red-haired man and the bearded man demand to know where Teslan is. The red-haired man whips around toward an ornate mirror, fist clenched tight and expression twisted in startled panic. The bearded man grits his teeth, rips his grip on the doorframe, and forces the door open with brute force. The blonde-haired man bursts through the wooden doorway roaring in rage, looming over the recoiling red-haired man like a storm. Hands planted on the smaller man's shoulders, the bearded man roars down at the red-haired man with terrifying intensity. Sweat beads on his brow, the red-haired man stares upward in shock, confronting the bearded man draped in white cloth. Wide-eyed and hand pressed to his chin, the bearded man stares intently at the small figure lost in deep thought. Both hands clamped around his own throat, the bearded man squeezes his eyes shut and bares his teeth in silent, crushing agony. A massive hand crushes the head of the small figure, whose glowing yellow eyes and bared teeth scream defiance. Yanking the red-haired man's arm upward, the bearded man shouts that he has been waiting while the victim grimaces in pain. Fingers digging into his cheeks, the red-haired man gasps in panic as terror forces his eyes wide open. Head thrown back, the bearded man unleashes a deafening roar, his face contorted in fierce, raw exertion. Thick ropes bind the red-haired man tightly to a tree trunk as he begs anyone, to listen to him. The bearded man slaps the gagged, bound youth tied to the tree, eliciting a muffled cry of surprise from the victim. Pain twists the red-haired man's face as the bearded man declares that training begins right now. Bound tightly by a thick rope wrapped around his jaw, the red-haired man stares forward in panic, sweat beading on his face. Sparks fly nearby as the red-haired man grimaces in pain, a thick rope binding his neck and torso tight. Agony tears through the pink-haired man as thick white fluid sprays from his mouth and tears stream down his cheeks. Energy crackles violently around his abdomen as the red-haired man cries out in sheer pain. A devastating blow sends the opponent flying backward, eyes wide in absolute shock as the red-haired man strikes. Tears stream from his eyes as the red-haired man screams in terror, while the white-haired woman reaches toward him with a sorrowful look. Purple impact effects surround the bearded man, his face contorted in anger as he stares forward with intense focus. Standing with his back to the viewer, the narration reveals that short-term memory loss is common for trainees enduring such excessive training. Gray tape binds the red-haired man's mouth tightly, while a muffled sound escapes desperately from the side. A snarling, beast-like figure lunges forward in a blur of motion, forcing the red-haired man to recoil in wide-eyed terror. Sword drawn, the red-haired man lunges forward and strikes the tree trunk with enough force to send shockwaves rippling through the air. A tear streams down his face as the red-haired man flinches in terror, while another figure screams that martial artists train to endure pain. Gripping two spiked clubs, the red-haired man roars with his body tensed in rage as the bearded man glares back angrily. The green staff strikes with deadly precision, while the other red-haired man watches with wide eyes and an open mouth. Eyes closed in sorrowful resignation, the bearded man admits that he is the only one left standing. A dark blade slices through his neck as the red-haired man grits his teeth and winces in agony, while blood sprays violently. Unleashing a powerful burst of energy, the red-haired man roars that the ocean is inside and demands it be brought out. Lying on his back, sweating and trembling with shock, the red-haired man stammers that the sea is an ocean. Barefoot beside the defeated, steaming opponent lying prone on the ground, the red-haired man stands victorious. Crouching on the ground and clutching his head in pain, the red-haired man groans that something was so tough while thanking someone profusely. Dark nebulae swirl through a star-filled night sky. Leaves drift through swirling pink mist between jagged black shapes. Sitting in a steaming tub filled with milky liquid and floating petals, the pink-haired man remarks that the queen bathed in milk for great skin, but claims that pales in comparison to something else. Staring in shock, the pink-haired man watches the bearded man whose eyes are closed and mouth open as if speaking. Expression hardening, the red-haired man stares forward, thinking that this brutal training method must be effective. Glowing eyes and crackling energy radiating from his body, the red-haired man stands rigid with fists clenched as power surges through him. Steam rises around him and a soft thud echoes as the pink-haired man stares forward with wide, startled eyes. Submerged in a blood-stained bath, the pink-haired man lies beneath thick white steam billowing upward, while a crescent moon hangs visible through the window. Intense golden eyes stare upward as the red-haired man faces the woman with long black hair looming above him in shadow with an unreadable expression. Under a heavy brow, the red-haired man's golden eye narrows, radiating cold intensity as he warns that there will be consequences if it happens again. A colossal figure with glowing yellow eyes looms behind the woman with long black hair, while the red-haired man stands beside them holding a sword. Swirling water surrounds the pink-haired man as leaves drift around him, his expression hardening with quiet resolve. Ringtessen's soul holds a tall stack of books, glances over their shoulder with a calm expression, and is identified as Ringtessen's soul. The spiky-haired man roars in triumph atop the meat, while the red-haired man stands before the feast, fists clenched tight. The red-haired man grimaces as he clutches his bruised bicep around a protruding bone, while the older bearded man laughs hysterically behind him. Our hero leaps barefoot up a snowy cliff while the red-haired boy struggles below with a massive bundle, panting heavily as small animals scatter. The red-haired man sprints forward with laser focus while the older warrior grips his staff in shock, flanked by two startled goats against a bright sky. The two red-haired men strain under massive sacks strapped to their backs as they climb a steep rock face, screaming that they must endure until the summit. The muscular man lies sprawled on a blue mat, eyes wide and mouth agape in pure shock as a deafening impact echoes around him. The red-haired man lies on his back, tear-filled eyes wide and mouth open, frozen in absolute shock as he stares upward. The spiky-haired muscular man crouches in a corner, clutching his knees and covering his face while trembling because he thinks he needs to run away. The hooded figure writes at a desk, warning that an unlucky soul might cease to exist, while observers note that teenage Reifenhart did not become active for 10 years. The shirtless man with long dark hair lifts two dumbbells to shoulder height, face contorted in strain as he grunts from the sheer effort. The muscular man with glowing red eyes throws his head back in manic laughter, gripping a staff topped with a blue orb as lightning crackles violently around him. The two red-haired men peek anxiously around a wooden post under a moonlit sky, breathing heavily as one blurts out that he has urgent news. The pink-haired man leaps through the air with arms outstretched, body tense for impact as he screams. The red-haired man grits his teeth and strains with intense effort as water splashes violently around him, sweat flying from his brow under a bright sky. The white-haired muscular man sits cross-legged atop a boulder with arms folded while the other figure stares upward in wide-eyed shock, sweat beading on their face. The white-haired muscular man roars in agony, clutching his throat as green substance seeps from his lips while the pink-haired man behind him stares in horrified shock. The pink-haired man gasps in shock, sweat flying from his face and hand raised, eyes wide with alarm as he demands to know what is happening. The wild-haired bearded man stares intently upward, hand touching his chin as he demands to know what is happening tonight against a backdrop of dark clouds. The man with spiky pink hair stares upward in shock, sweat beading on his temple as he demands what happened last time, expression frozen in stunned disbelief. The man with pink spiky hair and a black mask grits his teeth in furious strain, sweat dripping down his face as he demands to know what it was before that. The bearded man grimaces in pain as a fist slams into his jaw, sending shockwaves through his face while he cries out that this punch is unbearable. The shirtless man with white hair drags the other shirtless man by the neck across dusty ground, kicking up debris as he strides forward through the forest. The character screams in agony, face contorted with pain and tears streaming from their eye as sweat beads form on their skin. The red-haired man crouches in a defensive stance, shouting that the old man is hiding in the bushes behind him. The man with spiky hair chokes underwater, eyes wide in panic as bubbles rise around him, and a floating stone mask grins above. The shirtless man drags another limp, shirtless man across dusty ground by his collar, leaving a trail of blood behind them as the victim's bare feet scrape against the earth. The red-haired man collapses onto all fours in exhaustion while the muscular white-haired man stands with arms crossed, declaring that Jim Unbreakable has 130 years of disciple escape records. The man with sweat dripping from his brow and chin glares downward with gritted teeth, expression twisted in rage or exertion as he looms over an unseen target below. The shirtless man with wild white hair and beard screams in frustration while clutching his own arm, veins bulging across his torso as sunlight filters through the trees behind him. The three characters recoil in shock with wide eyes and open mouths as a spiked mace smashes forward with explosive force. Heavy metallic chains lie scattered across a sandy surface, their links thick and unbroken. The muscular man with spiky red hair stands shirtless as flames engulf his body, chains draped over his shoulders and a white sash tied around his waist, expression calm amid the inferno. The shirtless man, surrounded by roaring flames, stands barefoot on scattered chains while the massive figure in the foreground screams with rage, veins bulging and teeth bared. The muscular man with spiky hair and a beard grips a spiked club across his chest, grinning confidently as he asks if this much does not even hurt now. The muscular man with spiky blonde hair raises his hand to block a descending blade, gritting his teeth as he demands the attacker stop, while the younger red-haired man watches nearby. The older man with wild hair and a beard clenches his teeth in fierce exertion while surrounded by crackling golden energy, demanding sparring training. The character with wide, blank eyes stares forward while engulfed in flickering yellow flames against a dark background. Jagged stone spikes erupt violently from the ground with explosive force while chains hang suspended in the air against a shattered sky backdrop. Snow-covered mountain peaks rise through drifting clouds under a pale blue sky, marking the location as the southern region. Water cascades forcefully down a sheer, craggy cliff face under a bright sky. The muscular man with spiky red hair stands barefoot on a stone ledge, facing a massive cracked wall as torrents of water crash down on either side. A fist clenches tightly, radiating bright energy as it prepares to strike with explosive force. The red-haired man clenches his fist as golden energy surges around him, muscles tensed and crackling with power. The muscular man with spiky hair stands braced as golden energy radiates from his body, illuminating the air around him while he clenches his fist. A figure clenches a fist wreathed in blazing golden energy, sending sparks flying as they unleash a powerful strike with fierce intensity. A figure streaks downward through a blinding explosion of golden light, surrounded by the chaotic aftermath of impact. The muscular man with spiky hair thrusts his fist forward as crackling energy erupts around him, eyes narrowed in fierce concentration while he mutters that this will end it all. The shirtless man stands with hands on hips as dark aura erupts behind him, cracking the stone wall into debris while he says he needs to somehow polish his technique. A silhouetted figure stands with one arm raised within a tunnel of concentric light rings, while the text states that the tension is building. The shirtless man with red spiky hair stands barefoot on a rocky ledge before a cascading waterfall, one hand resting on his hip as he gazes off to the side. The muscular man with reddish hair raises his open hand and stares forward with intense focus, while a speech bubble appears at the bottom of the frame. The muscular man with spiky hair extends his arms to channel a swirling orb of purple energy, body tensed as he gathers power into the glowing sphere between his hands. The muscular man thrusts his palm forward to unleash a blinding purple energy blast labeled Arrow Bullet, filling the air with explosive force. A spiral of glowing runes pulses on a pale surface as white energy arcs upward through swirling violet light. The shirtless man with spiky red hair scratches his head in confusion while saying that he cannot remember anything through his artificial flash black, brow furrowed with frustration. The man with a scarred face stares intensely forward, golden eye narrowed in anger or focus, as shadows deepen around his brow and jaw. The muscular figure stands in a sunlit forest clearing, gazing toward the trees ahead as if listening to an unseen voice speaking above. A clawed hand presses into cracked earth, sending splinters flying as the ground trembles beneath its weight. The blue-skinned warrior with wild black hair grips a sword hilt, fanged grin twisting as sunlight filters through the forest behind him. The red-haired man stares forward with narrowed golden eyes and a furrowed brow, expression hardening with silent intensity against a fading blue backdrop. The green-skinned man with glowing eyes and fangs bares his teeth in a snarl, sweat dripping down his face as he glares with furious intensity. Waldenteres narrows his golden eyes, his expression hardening as he begins to judge the threat by its sheer size. The green-skinned warrior bares his teeth in a feral snarl, sweat beading on his brow while his eyes burn with pure fury. Waldenteres smirks with bold amusement, addressing the figure before him as nothing more than a young orc. Shock freezes the green-skinned warrior's face as Waldenteres demands to know how a human could possibly speak the language of grace. The green-skinned warrior stands silent in the forest, his expression stern and completely unreadable. Perched atop a rocky ledge with hands on hips, Waldenteres asks if he can truly be trusted. The green-skinned warrior whips his head to the side, eyes narrowing as he urgently warns that something is approaching. Standing in profile, Waldenteres smiles faintly, gazing upward with a calm, contemplative look. A smirk plays on Waldenteres' lips as he raises his right hand, swirling purple energy surrounding him while the air hums with raw power. Waldenteres extends his hand toward a blinding purple energy vortex that has shattered the surrounding stone, all while another figure watches in awe. The green-skinned warrior and Waldenteres stand tense before the swirling purple vortex, energy crackling violently between them. Sweat glistens on his bare skin as Waldenteres falls silent, his expression suddenly startled. Beside a glowing purple portal, Waldenteres demands kindness as a shadowy figure emerges from the swirling chaos. Waldenteres stares intently forward, his expression hardening as a sharp intake of breath echoes around him. Waldenteres watches a group of cloaked figures sprint down the forest path, demanding to know where they think they are going. Striding through a birch forest, the armored man shouts that they will pay a gold coin for any information about what lies ahead. The blond man laughs, pressing his palms against a shocked, dark-haired woman's face, while Waldenteres stands silently behind them. Waldenteres looks down at a kneeling armored figure with their back turned, the air thick with tense silence. The bearded man crawls forward in pain, while the man beside him screams that they must keep moving. Arms crossed and brow furrowed, Waldenteres stands before a waterfall and declares this land his territory. The dark-haired warrior screams with an open mouth and furious expression, standing beside a blond man who roars in equal rage. Waldenteres stands with arms crossed and a furrowed brow, his eyes narrowing into a point of stern focus. Hovering midair above a glowing purple magic circle, Waldenteres asks, "What should I do, master?" A hand grips a weapon hilt as purple energy fractures the ground beneath, accompanied by a declaration that they are stronger with bare fists. Perched atop a rocky outcrop, Waldenteres holds a large club while two figures below react in shock, daring each other to fight. A character grits their teeth in visible strain, jaw clenched tight as tension radiates from the rigid line of their mouth. Waldenteres lunges forward mid-strike, body tensed and mouth roaring, as he drives an attack that sends opponents flying backward. The armored man roars, gripping his sword tightly while flanked by two alarmed companions bracing against an unseen threat. Waldenteres stares downward with narrowed eyes as a large jagged object slams into the ground beside him with explosive force. Waldenteres blocks a blade striking his lower back, gritting his teeth in pain as the weapon shatters against his defense. The man with a top knot stares in terror at a curved blade thrust inches from his face, sweat beading on his skin. Waldenteres swings a sword that strikes with explosive force, sending a shockwave across the cracked ground as purple energy erupts. Spinning midair, Waldenteres slashes at multiple fleshy creatures, sending them flying while declaring that they are not dying today. A masked figure lunges forward, blade piercing through an armored opponent's neck, while another man screams in shock behind them. Hovering above a cracked floor, Waldenteres holds a glowing cleaver, casting a long shadow over 6 defeated figures groaning in pain. Sweat beads on the man's face as he screams in rage, jamming a sword hilt first into another's shoulder and demanding surrender or death. A man screams in terror as a figure looms behind him with a manic grin and raised arm, the sound of impact echoing loudly. Carrying a grateful companion through the woods, a man stumbles and stammers thanks while Waldenteres watches from the foreground. Holding a broken sword hilt and a large shard of its blade, Waldenteres stares forward with a blank, unreadable expression. Bare-chested atop a cliff under a sunset sky, Walden Terry stands while another figure in green armor watches from the foreground with silent tension. The green-skinned warrior grips his shoulder armor, gritting his teeth as a sword strapped to his back glints against the sky. Barefoot on rocky ground, Walden Terry watches as a robed figure bows deeply before him, declaring herself his new mentor. The green-skinned warrior embraces a dark-haired figure tightly against his chest, eyes shut and fangs visible as he holds them close. In serene profile, Walden Terry smiles as golden light and floating particles surround him. Bathed in warm golden light, Walden Terry strokes his chin in thought, suggesting quiet contemplation or a dawning realization. Shirtless against a glowing sunset sky, Walden Terry stands with a calm, confident expression as he introduces himself by name. A muscular warrior with long hair and fangs glares fiercely, declaring that he will remember that name with intense resolve. Against a backdrop of glowing waterfalls, the green-skinned warrior asks what destination lies in the other's mind. Jagged crystalline spires pierce a glowing sunset sky, while unseen voices speak of orcs hiding in the land of trails. A dark-haired figure sprints down a dusty slope, declaring they will be on their way while leaving Walden Terry's atop a distant ridge. Arms crossed and defiant, Walden Terry's roars as flames erupt violently behind him against a snowy mountain backdrop. The blue-skinned warrior roars, declaring himself the son of Crota and heir to Latzax while his body tenses with power. Stunned, Walden Terry stares forward with an open mouth and wide eyes, uttering a startled "huh." A warrior with wild black hair and a sword strapped to his back strides through glowing grass, demanding to know what that is. Tathid lunges forward with bared fangs, roaring as it crushes armored soldiers beneath its claws, while a narration box identifies one of the 4 heavenly kings. Walden Terry scratches his head, winking and grinning nervously as sweat beads on his cheek, and he clearly feels flustered. Standing on a cliff edge overlooking a vast canyon at sunset, Walden Terry's remarks that this is indeed a fateful encounter. Gazing forward with a calm, knowing smile, Walden Terry's is surrounded by golden light and floating embers. A group of adventurers raises their weapons toward a towering spire under a bright sky, one clenching his fist with fierce determination. A green-skinned horned warrior with wild hair stands imposingly against a blue void, staring forward with fierce intensity. The blue-skinned demon stands tall in a white robe adorned with bone necklaces, wearing a serene yet commanding expression against a clear sky. The elf stands calmly against a clear blue sky, her serene expression reflecting quiet confidence as she gazes forward. The elderly man stares forward in solemn silence against a clear blue sky. The robed figure laughs openly, resting their chin on one hand and radiating confident amusement against a deep blue backdrop. Before an ornate glowing tree, the blue-skinned demon addresses a gathered group, declaring them friend and brother. Jagged snow-capped mountains pierce through the mist, looming over a frozen lake. Tessin screams in pure rage, thrusting a fist wreathed in blazing golden energy forward, his face twisted in fury. A figure gets swallowed by a blazing explosion labeled Chi Bullet, their body contorted midair as if hammered by pure force. Tessin lunges with a clenched fist, shouting that this is too much while streaks of motion and dust swirl around him. Tessin roars as he unleashes a massive swirling energy blast, sending a distant opponent flying upward through the air. Golden energy erupts around Tessin as he stands braced with arms crossed, while a voice declares his spiral guard has ascended to a summit. Shirtless and grinning fiercely, Tessin stands with hands on hips as flames flicker wildly around him. Tessin covers his mouth with one hand, grinning broadly with eyes crinkled in amusement against a backdrop of swirling flames. Tessin looms over a smaller red-haired figure, stroking his chin thoughtfully while demanding to know what the other is doing. Tessin screams with glowing eyes and a clenched fist as 3 shadowy martial kings named Valkenshut, Calbrain and Rastal loom behind him. Tessin grips the head of a smaller red-haired man who looks up in shock, remarking that the Tessin he met was also around 2.3 meters tall. A dark-skinned man sweats profusely while staring upward as Tessin looms behind him, demanding that he remain sturdy. Barefoot in the snow with flames swirling around his feet, Tessin stands while another figure watches from atop a distant rocky peak under a pale sky. A man's eye glows with a vertical golden slit pupil as tension crackles in the air, his brow furrowed and jaw set tight. Tessin leaps upward through swirling golden energy as a white spear erupts from the ground below, his body tense and eyes fixed skyward. Tessin stomps his foot down, sending a shockwave of golden energy rippling outward as he grits his teeth in exertion. Tessin lunges forward with a glowing energy-charged fist extended, radiating explosive force and motion as Korean onomatopoeia bursts around the impact zone. Tessin stands amidst a blinding golden explosion as they declare the activation of the 4th superposition calamity, horn radiating overwhelming power. A figure falls backward through a blinding vortex of jagged ice shards and electric blue energy, surrounded by violent motion lines and explosive light. Shattered ice and debris explode outward in a blinding flash of blue-white light as the sound of impact booms across the scene. A lone figure stands on a jagged precipice as massive ice shards explode upward in a blinding cascade of light and frost. Tessin roars fiercely with his mouth wide open and eyes narrowed in rage as droplets fly around him against a bright sky. Tessin clenches his fists in triumph as crackling energy erupts around him, shouting that he has achieved the 4th superposition Calamity Horn, while another shirtless man watches from atop a rock behind him. Tessin stands on a cracked ledge, overlooking another distant figure while asking pardon. Tessin bares his teeth in a fierce grin with eyes narrowed with intensity against a bright sky. Tessin stands calmly on cracked ice and declares that his disciple is free to live as he wants now, indifferent to whether he becomes good or evil. Tessin bares his teeth in a fierce grin while glowing energy streaks across the sky behind him. Tessin stares forward with a tense, determined expression as sweat beads on his skin while he speaks. Tessin glares forward while a masked, shirtless figure stands behind him with arms crossed, and another person lies prone at their feet as glowing streaks cut through the air. Tessin raises his index finger while grinning fiercely, as if making a bold declaration or challenge, with an expression radiating confident intensity. Tessin kneels on the ground before another figure with fists clenched and an intense expression as glowing particles float around him in the air. Tessin flashes a peace sign while grinning wildly as the man in the foreground stares back with wide eyes and a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. Tessin stands with his back turned and one hand raised while speaking that being weak is the only sin, as a spiky-haired man kneels on the rocky ground nearby under a sky filled with floating glowing particles. Tessin holds up 3 fingers with a fierce focused expression as he demands that the challenger prove their worth. Tessin stares intensely forward while holding up 3 fingers with a fierce and unyielding expression. Tessin raises his index finger and demands to know if the red-haired man standing before him understands, while snowflakes drift through the air between them against a backdrop of jagged rock formations. Tessin grimaces in pain as he gets struck across the face by a large, heavy sack. Tessin holds a large tied sack in one hand and a glowing orb in the other with a tense expression as he stares forward. Tessin holds out a pouch toward a bearded commoner who grins with delight, while the red-haired man remarks that it represents half a year's worth of living expenses for a commoner. Tessin grips a scroll tightly in his hands and grits his teeth as he demands that the secrets within finally reveal themselves with knuckles white from strain. Tessin stares intently at a large weathered parchment he holds in his hand with a serious expression as faint light particles drift through the air around him. Tessin stands atop jagged ice spires as snow swirls around them and bright light floods the sky. Tessin stands against a bright sky with a tense expression and narrowed eyes as if bracing for impact. Tessin stands against snow-capped mountains as glowing particles swirl around him with a calm and resolute expression. Tessin stares in shock as a towering pillar of golden energy erupts from the ground, shattering stone and filling the air with sparks and debris. Tessin screams in terror as a glowing blade pierces through his shoulder with tears streaming down his face while he cries out for his mother. Tessin raises his right fist high as golden energy erupts around him with his face contorted in a roar while the air shimmers with explosive force. Tessin grins fiercely while gripping a screaming younger man by the collar as explosive energy erupts between them and fiery onomatopoeia fills the air. A 3-story timber-framed building with a slate roof and outdoor seating area stands in a quiet town square. Tessin stares forward with weary eyes while a younger man behind him gasps in shock with his hand clutching his chest as he demands to know what is happening. The knight stands rigidly with a stern expression as he grips the hilt of his sword. The merchant stands beside an armored figure as an elderly merchant gestures while speaking to them with an earnest and inviting expression. The knight gives a thumbs up and snaps his fingers, causing a glowing golden heart to materialize before him with a sharp ringing sound. Tessin stares in wide-eyed shock at a glowing golden orb resting in his cupped hands with an expression of stunned disbelief. The knight smiles softly at another figure whose hands are clasped around a small golden object while the room glows with quiet warmth. The knight shouts in rage with teeth bared and eyes wide with fury as speed lines streak across the frame. The knight recoils with a choked gasp as a powerful force strikes them, sending shockwaves through the air. The knight grips his own collar tightly with eyes narrowed in distress while 2 shadowed figures loom over him with snarling expressions and bared teeth. The knight turns their head to glance back over their shoulder with a smirk while a dark-haired character stands close behind them in shadow as the cloaked one begins to speak. The knight strides forward with a smug grin while behind him stands an elven woman in similar regalia as he declares that mercy must never be shown to peasants. The man offers a faint knowing smile as his gaze sharpens with quiet confidence. A woman lies in restful stillness atop an ornate bed, her eyes shut tight. Ciri smiles with quiet satisfaction as the blonde elf presses against him, asking about his preference for her thin frame. The blonde elf places a hand on her flushed chest and whispers that she feels something specific. The tearful red-haired man slams a bandaged hand against the barrier, apologizes to Ciri, and declares this is now his body. The tall man flexes his bandaged arm proudly while the white-haired elf smiles adoringly at him, leaving Ceres to watch with gloomy resignation. The muscular man leans against a window frame, gazing out at the city in heavy silence. The red-haired man shouts down from a window at startled pedestrians below as snow drifts through the narrow street. Under the pale sky, the red-haired man presses a gloved hand to his chin, wondering what he should do next. Three figures stand on a cobblestone street as snow falls gently around their cloaks. The red-haired man grips his collar tightly, his expression stern as faint steam rises from his shoulders. A dark obelisk stands within a swirling vortex of white energy, while voices speak of future memories and ancient ruins. A knight in armor demands to know if the ancient ruins have been found, while a cloaked figure urges them to wait. A man sits cross-legged in meditation, eyes closed, as crackling white energy surges violently around him. The young master leans forward confidently, asking if that must be it, while his attendant confirms the statement. A knight in silver armor stands beneath a wooden eave, gazing toward distant snow-capped mountains and castle spires. The red-haired man walks through snow with two companions, marveling at his amazing stamina and insane body. Dark shadows pool around his fur-collared coat as the red-haired man stares forward with intense focus. The red-haired man stares ahead while two women wrestle joyfully atop a glittering hoard of gold and jewels behind him. Black Boot steps firmly onto snow, kicking up a puff of powder with a sharp crunch. The red-haired man stands overlooking a snow-covered village at night and identifies it as the Cattle Village. A group gathers around a table in a dim hall with tense postures as one voice asks what they should do. A man in a green vest raises his hands in panic, pleading that he meant no harm to the looming figure. A man in a scarf bares his teeth in fury, while another man shouts that he needs to tone it down. The red-haired man grips a sword and arrows tightly, his face shocked, demanding to know if Ted was there. A woman cries out for her husband while clutching a sword as the red-haired man holds it grimly, admitting he does not want to go. A man with glowing eyes clenches his fist and shouts while a crying child beside him begs him not to go. The red-haired man screams in terror as a distorted monstrous face looms behind him, eyes wide and mouth open. The red-haired man presses his palm against frosted glass while another man outside draws a bow, demanding to know who he is. A man in an orange coat stands tall with glowing hair as a group confronts him angrily, demanding to know why he still wants something. The red-haired man smirks confidently and declares that he has already been to the place in question. A dark metallic monolith stands at the center of a shattered stone floor, surrounded by spiraling rings of crackling white energy. A knight in ornate armor strides forward with a massive banner fluttering behind them as glowing energy trails from their form. A severed head with long hair and fangs lies on a hexagonal tile floor beside an ornate dark sword with golden inlays. A knight in white armor and a blue cloak strides forward with grim resolve, while a nobleman declares that 50 years have passed since their last gathering. An elf woman in red armor faces a knight in white armor and a blue cloak, while a cloaked figure watches from the foreground. The red-haired man stands behind two smiling companions, observing armored soldiers moving through the woods while thinking they are having fun. A red-haired girl smiles brightly with golden eyes and breathes visible vapor into the cold air. A red-haired woman laughs with closed eyes as steam rises from her body, while the red-haired man stares at her with wide, startled eyes. A red-haired woman holds a glowing orb as Ceres reaches toward it with a smirk, while the red-haired man watches intently from behind. A red-haired woman and Ceres stand close together, smiling warmly at each other while glowing orange roses float between them. A dark-haired woman in purple robes covers her mouth with a hand while smiling broadly as a red-haired girl beside her stares forward in confusion. The red-haired man sweats profusely while holding a finger to his lips, demanding that someone has made a grave mistake. The red-haired man stands beside a cloaked figure with closed eyes, while the latter murmurs that they are ready but hesitates. An armored figure with fur trim leans close to the red-haired man, who flinches and asks what could possibly be scary when brave knights accompany them. The red-haired man grimaces and groans while standing beside a brown-haired man, whose face is contorted in anguish under the dark night sky. The red-haired man stands with his back turned, while another man in a red cloak gasps in shock at a massive roar echoing behind them. Three figures stand on a snowy ridge as jagged ice spikes erupt from the forest behind them, while silence hangs thick in the frozen air. Shredded fur clumps fly apart amid crackling white energy and purple impact effects. A monstrous winged beast with glowing orange eyes screams as it dives through a swirling vortex of wind, with blurred speed and fury. Three winged monsters with glowing eyes dive downward through a snowy sky with claws extended and mouths open in silent shrieks. A monstrous winged beast lunges forward with claws extended, while armored figures brace in the background and the red-haired man below gasps in terror. A feral horned beast with glowing eyes lunges forward mid-roar with claws extended, its body contorted in violent motion. A male knight in white and gold armor lunges forward with a glowing sword and shouts that Alton is the knight general, while the blonde elf woman leaps behind him. The red-haired man thrusts his hand forward with a fierce shout and unleashes glowing chains wreathed in fire, demanding the attack strike true. A robed figure raises a hand as glowing orange energy erupts upward and consumes shadowy winged forms in explosive bursts of light and flame. A pink-haired girl clenches her fists and shouts with fierce determination as armored knights stand behind her in a glowing formation. The knight in white armor and a blue cloak thrusts his glowing sword into a snarling beast's neck and demands it stop attacking while the red-haired man watches with arms crossed. The red-haired man stares forward with grim intensity and remains silent as his breath becomes visible in the cold air. Wind brushes past him as the red-haired man stares intently into the distance with a stern expression. A burly man with dark skin charges forward barefoot, gritting his teeth while carrying a massive sack over his shoulder. The red-haired man roars in rage, surrounded by crackling energy and motion streaks. A green-skinned figure drives a fist into the face of a red-skinned man, with fangs who grimaces in pain from the impact. The red-haired man's face contorts in shock as a fist slams into their jaw and sends them reeling backward with wide eyes. A swirling vortex of red and black energy spirals violently outward and radiates intense white light at its core as sharp fragments tear through the air. The red-haired man throws a glowing punch forward with narrowed eyes while thinking that no one is paying any attention to him. A fantasy world map displays geographical locations and routes with a red dotted line marking a path from the capital Salud to Battle Village. The battered man grips a knife and arrows, his face twisted in fierce strain as he braces for battle. A monstrous beast roars with bared fangs, while energy crackles around its wild fur against the stormy sky. Stefan lunges forward with a sword, his face contorted in determination as he shouts for Stefan. The armored warrior slices through an enemy with a glowing blade, while shouting that he will save someone. The dark-haired knight cleaves enemies from above as soldiers recoil in shock, and another character below begs them to wait. The red-haired woman demands they get free, while the man in green notes the injured figure is recovering slightly. A character flies violently upward past jagged stone spires, their body blurred by extreme speed under the bright sky. Blades strike the red-haired man's chest repeatedly, yet his expression remains unshaken and his eyes narrow in cold defiance. The reddish-haired man screams in anguish or rage, his face contorted as he demands to be asked something. The red-haired warrior raises his fist and declares that tears he never cried during training still remain within him. The armored knight demands to know if they are safe, while the cloaked figure assures him both are. The knight in white and blue armor roars that the Altan knighthood is strong as he raises his arm high. The cloaked knight rallies the cheering soldiers behind him by shouting for victory, while a glowing figure watches from the trees. The man in the fur-collared coat smiles down at the tense cloaked figure who looks up as he begins to speak. The man in the fur-lined coat claims he has a friend there, prompting the woman to question his statement with surprise. The spiky-haired man with golden eyes stares forward with a stern expression, his fur-lined cloak visible against the darkness. The long-haired man in purple speaks earnestly to the turned figure, leaning forward with a tense expression in the rocky setting. The long-haired man chuckles menacingly, while the young boy in pink stares back in wide-eyed terror with his mouth agape. The towering red-haired man raises a fist as if issuing a command, while armored soldiers stand motionless beneath the tall trees. The spiky-haired man demands to know if something is weird, while the dark-haired man in purple looks up skeptically. The woman admires his features silently, while her hands grip a distorted face in an atmosphere of intense fascination. The red-haired man grins wildly while sweating profusely, facing another man who smiles back with drool hanging from his lips. The brown-haired man in fur-lined armor strides forward with a smirk, while the woman in white robes gasps in shock behind him. The woman channels glowing pink energy into the wounded man's chest while demanding he stay still and reassuring him it does not hurt. The pink-haired woman channels energy through her raised hand, while asking if he wasted his energy on them. The pink-haired priestess accepts thanks from two grateful men, while a red-haired observer reflects that people's fundamental values are the biggest issue. The armored knight slaps the red-haired man across the face and shouts that he will not tolerate such insolence. The armored man demands to know what caused that eerie voice, while his companion gestures nervously and stares back with wide eyes. Sunlight filters through towering trees in a quiet forest clearing, casting dappled shadows on the mossy ground. A soldier stumbles forward with a panicked expression and shouts that he is sorry while his comrades react with alarm behind him. The man in the blue shirt screams that everyone must listen while the man in the fur-collared coat grins smugly and asks if he needs rest. The spiky-haired man with glowing yellow eyes grins widely while claiming he took the listener on the fastest route so he did not lie. The knight in white and gold armor raises his arm and shouts that he will not let them pass with determined fury. The young man with dark hair stares forward in shock as sweat rolls down his cheek, and he gasps that something impossible happened. The cloaked figure strides toward the glowing chasm entrance while companions follow behind as shimmering particles drift through the sunlit air. The man in white and gold armor shouts that there is no doubt about it, while another man behind him looks on with alarm. A dark dome structure with glowing cracks sits amid shattered ice and rising steam, surrounded by fractured terrain under a pale sky. Three figures in cloaks stand before a massive metallic tower embedded in a rocky canyon, as mist swirls around ancient ruins at its base. Armored figures and cloaked individuals stand before a massive triangular gate crackling with energy, surrounded by swirling mist and floating sparks. The man in the purple cloak gestures toward a stone corridor and states that this is the entrance while armored companions stand ready behind him. The black-haired man in blue armor shouts for everyone to get ready, while the red-haired man behind him watches with a calm gaze. The red-haired warrior grins broadly while gripping the black-haired man's shoulder as the other man admits he has no way to escape his fate. A smiling man with spiky hair clasps his hands while glowing warmly behind an armored warrior who stares forward with intense, narrowed eyes. The knight in blue and white armor raises his sword high above cheering followers and shouts that they must find the demonic sword Altian. The armored knight grabs a screaming man by the throat and lifts him off the ground while a red-haired onlooker raises his hand in alarm. The man in the tan coat raises his hand as blue light pulses along the seams of the towering metal doors etched with ancient carvings. The spiky-haired man with golden eyes stares forward with a confident smirk and sharp self-assurance as he begins to speak. Ivy chokes the glowing blue seams of the stone floor while faint sparks drift upward from the cracks. The man in the beige coat walks forward through the glowing corridor while remembering he once came to investigate this place with Ceres and that they were happy. The pale elf presses her hand against the glowing barrier and smiles softly as blue light swirls around her and tiny butterflies flutter near her face. The cloaked figure stands before the glowing blue rift, while another woman with flowing hair rises from the light with her arm raised and expression serene. The red-haired man grits his teeth with flushed cheeks and sweat on his face while asking what he and Ceres did in the middle of a ranger. The pink-haired figure in the fur-collared coat presses their palm against the glowing blue panel on the stone wall and remarks that they basically have the answer sheet. The spiky-haired man grimaces in pain as sweat beads on his brow and purple energy crackles around him while he cries out in distress. The man in the beige coat raises his hand as purple energy swirls around him and declares that it worked with a calm expression. A thick brown coat with white fur trim rests heavily on the floor and kicks up dust as it lands with a solid thud. The pink-haired man in the dark uniform blocks an incoming punch with his wrapped forearm and grits his teeth with a strained expression as he braces against the impact. The man with spiky pink hair turns his head sharply and asks Huh with a startled expression as he notices something off-panel behind him. The red-haired man in the sleeveless tunic points forward with both hands and screams in shock, while demanding to know what is happening. The man with pink hair stands before the stone staircase descending into darkness and explains that this secret path connects to the third floor of the basement, while warning that opening it constitutes trespassing. The red-haired man stares forward with wide, terrified eyes and beads of sweat rolling down his face as a bright white light streaks toward him from the left. A single amber eye widens in shock and conveys sudden realization or terror. The spiky-haired man with glowing yellow eyes stares intensely forward with his face half shrouded in shadow, while an unseen system announces that the mana system activated all sorts of security features. Two girls stand atop a ledge laughing as three shadowy figures plummet into darkness below, while one declares that the group is in the basement. The man with pink hair and a beard sweats profusely, while gritting his teeth in visible strain with his expression twisted with effort. The man in dark armor grimaces as glowing energy crackles across his chest plate, and his eyes widen with shock and pain. The young man in white and blue armor screams upward as a massive, blood-splattered blade descends toward him with violent force. The figure in the blue cloak whirls around with wide-eyed shock and demands to know what is happening. A bandaged hand grips a massive, glowing blue scythe wedged between stone walls in a dimly lit corridor. A grotesque horned skull with glowing red eyes and jagged teeth looms in shadow with its gaze fixed menacingly on an unseen target. The man with dark hair and a blue scarf stares downward in shock with his mouth agape, and a single tear falling from his eye as he confronts an unseen presence below. A horned demon wielding dual blades lunges downward toward a cloaked figure in armor with glowing red eyes fixed on the target as shadowy beasts loom behind it in the dark corridor. The pink-haired warrior drops to her knees beside Kale, glowing hands pressing into his chest as he winces in agony. Kale flashes a grateful smile at the priest while pink healing magic swirls around him. The man in the purple cloak thanks the mage, crediting their survival to her protection magic. The group pushes forward through the stone corridor, gnarled vines hanging above them as they approach a dark arched doorway. A man in armor grimaces and drives a forceful blow home, a guttural cry tearing from his throat. The horned demon lunges from the shadows, sending soldiers flying backward in panic as one screams that it's a monster. The horned demon charges forward, roaring that no one escapes while armored soldiers scream and flee. The pink-haired warrior raises her hand, shouting for Phalanx to strike down this corrupt being with a mace of light. The horned demon hovers above a glowing staff, surrounded by swirling energy and falling figures as a voice demands courage. The pink-haired warrior shouts with fierce intensity, her hand raised mid-gesture to convey explosive motion and raw emotion. The pink-haired warrior strikes the armored figures, screaming that they should grant them dear phalanx. Sir Claude screams with wide, frantic eyes, while another man roars beside him as pink energy crackles around them. A hooded figure watches from the shadows as armored warriors surge forward with feral rage and screaming battle fury. The colossal armored figure leaps downward with dual blades drawn while skeletal warriors charge and the red-haired warrior braces for impact. The man in the purple cloak thrusts his hand forward as swirling blue energy erupts around him, shouting that he will reclaim what was taken. The man in the purple cloak leaps downward, screaming that he is iron steel as his sword strikes a monstrous figure below. The elf-like warrior leaps through the air, dual-wielding glowing swords as she descends toward a monstrous creature with fierce determination. The knight in silver armor lunges forward with a glowing blade, eyes narrowed and teeth bared as she screams while slicing through dark energy. The female knight grits her teeth and endures a violent impact that splatters blood across her chest plate while emitting a pained scream. A colossal fist crashes down with violent force upon the female knight, sending her crashing backward through shattered stone as blood sprays into the air. A gloved hand presses down on shattered stone debris, causing small fragments to scatter outward as fine dust rises around the fingers. The elf-like warrior kneels on cracked stone with blood pooling beneath her, asking if she was of any help as she calls out for her master. Sir Claude charges forward with sword drawn, shouting that Lelsha did a good job while the elf-like warrior sits slumped against rubble behind him. Sir Claude lunges forward with a glowing blade, cleaving through shadowy beasts as icy energy erupts around him. Sir Claude swings his glowing sword downward with force, sending dark liquid splattering into the air as magical sparks swirl around him. Sir Claude grins fiercely while facing an army of skeletons as a companion in red shouts that he is the Knight of Resolve. Sir Claude shouts that everyone must get themselves together and declares this is where even he was defeated, his face twisted with urgency. The fiery monster erupts between four onlookers, their faces contorted in shock and terror as flames lick upward with roaring intensity. The warrior in dark armor shatters through a stone wall with explosive force, sending debris and sparks flying as armored guards recoil in shock. Sir Claude stands braced before the fiery monster wreathed in searing flames that engulf the ruined hall. The fiery monster roars with its maw agape, glowing embers and crackling energy erupting from within as fiery light illuminates its jagged teeth. The colossal armored figure unleashes a devastating fiery blast that engulfs the battlefield, sending soldiers flying through the air as explosions erupt around them. Sir Claude roars as he unleashes a searing blast of fire that engulfs a snarling shadow beast, while another armored figure cowers on the ground. The horned demon erupts through the stone wall in a violent burst of fire and debris, sending armored knights flying backward as they scream in terror. The warrior in blue and gold armor swings a glowing blade with fierce intensity, his face contorted in exertion as golden energy erupts around him. The warrior in blue and gold armor grits his teeth in fierce determination, sweat dripping down his face as sparks fly around him. The warrior in blue and gold armor lunges forward with a sword, eyes blazing with fury as he shouts that he cannot just keep losing like this. Sir Claude leaps through roaring flames to strike a snarling horned beast with a sword, while another armored figure braces below as fire and smoke engulf the battlefield. The warrior in blue and gold armor grits his teeth in intense strain, sweat dripping from his brow as he declares that someone has earned the title of resolute. The warrior in blue and gold armor lunges forward with a glowing sword, unleashing a fiery slash that erupts into swirling flames and sparks as he shouts for his shooting strike to pierce through the darkness. The warrior in blue and gold armor's face twists in shock and pain as a fist slams into his jaw, blood flying from his split lip, while his wide eyes scream silent horror. Sir Claude leaps midair with sword drawn, crashing down toward a molten dragon-like beast erupting from the ground while three armored onlookers recoil in shock. Sir Claude launches through the air above a shattered stone floor while a group of armored guards brace for impact as an explosive burst of energy erupts beneath them. Sir Claude collapses backward onto the ground, his eyes wide with shock as debris rains down around him. The pink-haired warrior throws her arms wide and shouts for phalanx to destroy the corrupt beings with its light as a monstrous glowing entity descends above her. A massive sword pierces through a muscular figure's head, erupting in flames and pink energy as the blade glows with explosive force. The fiery monster looms in the inferno, its presence radiating heat and dread as dark fluid trails from its maw. The red-haired woman stares in shock as fire erupts from her hand, sweat beading on her face while she gasps that this power is not hers. The robed individual stands with arms outstretched as a colossal, swirling vortex of fire and dark energy erupts above them. The red-haired woman grits their teeth and furrows their brow in visible strain, sweat beading on their face as they endure intense pressure or pain. The red-haired woman hovers above a massive, crackling explosion of golden energy and shadowy tendrils erupting from the ground below. The red-haired woman stares in wide-eyed shock, her hand clutching her chest as if startled by an unseen revelation, golden light catching the fear in her gaze. The warrior in blue and gold armor lunges forward in a burst of golden light, his fist clenched and body tensed as if charging into battle. The red-haired man lunges forward with clenched fists, surrounded by swirling golden energy that shatters the stone floor beneath him, while the red-haired woman watches from behind. The warrior in blue and gold armor lunges forward in a dynamic stance, cracking the stone floor beneath him, while the red-haired woman watches intently from behind. The pink-haired warrior stands amid swirling dark smoke and shattered stone, raising a fist as he wonders aloud that such little effort was enough to kill it. The warrior in blue and gold armor stands tensed and sweating, his eyes wide with shock as a woman behind him gasps in alarm while he mutters that no wonder. The warrior in blue and gold armor stares forward with a stern expression as snowflakes drift around him against a cold backdrop. The boy in the blue hood lies on cracked stone with foam at his lips while the elf-like warrior kneels nearby amid swirling mist and fallen soldiers. The skeletal warriors descend stone steps with glowing eyes and bared teeth, their leader gripping a severed head by the hair as mist curls around their feet. The man in the purple cloak and the pink-haired warrior stand side by side, their faces frozen in shock and sweat beading on their brows as they stare forward in stunned silence. The warrior in blue and gold armor drives a massive glowing weapon downward into a skull-faced enemy, shouting that no one gets in his way while two distant figures watch from behind. The dark-haired warrior grits his teeth in frustration, dragging a gloved hand through his hair. The red-cloaked figure demands to know who is awake as the group stands atop their defeated foes. The armored knight crouches in shock, asking what happened while the red-cloaked figure smirks sinisterly. The dark-haired warrior screams in sheer panic, demanding to know what the hell is going on. Ryfen stands confident with hands on hips while armored men shout that he is an artist. The blue-cloaked knight bows and asks for Steam's name while Ryfen repeats the question back at him. Ryfen crosses his arms and mutters that his name is Ryfen. The blue-cloaked knight presses which family Ryfen belongs to while his companion wonders aloud. The dark-haired warrior stares in disbelief, realizing this is just a regular person. Ryfen places a hand on the armored knight's shoulder and declares their work is finished. Ryfen raises his fist with a smirk while the blue-cloaked knight gasps in absolute shock. The dark-haired warrior shouts furiously while Ryfen stands behind him, wearing a worried look. Ryfen demands the armored knight state who taught him while everyone else watches. Ryfen sweats with a strained expression as an older figure shouts about a new training method. Ryfen points to his temple and comments that he picked up those skills here and there. The red-cloaked figure stares forward with narrowed eyes, remaining completely silent. Ryfen points toward the fallen figures and asks if they need help. Ryfen touches his ear and internally wonders if the subject truly cares about anything at all. The red-cloaked figure stares at Ryfen, thinking such a strange person stands before him. The pink-haired girl asks if his name is Ripen and demands to know how tall he is. The pink-haired girl clasps her hands and excitedly asks about someone's weight. The pink-haired girl asks what kind of training produced such a body, while he replies that he simply got hit and lifted a lot. The pink-haired girl exclaims that she knows martial artists would never reveal their training methods. Caption notes that a healthy body and a deep, loud voice are essential. Ryfen realizes his height never changed despite every attempt to overcome his weak body. The pink-haired girl thinks he is big and beautiful, while a man screams in panic behind her. Ryfen stands tense and sweating, while the pink-haired girl declares that she will go with them. Ryfen stares intently forward, while the girl in the white cloak shivers against the wall. The blue-cloaked knight commands Lelsha to stay behind and help out while she agrees to obey. Ryfen tells the armored knight to do as he pleases with cold indifference. Ryfen strides forward through a stone corridor, while the red-cloaked figure follows close behind. Ryfen strides forward with grim determination, while the blue-cloaked knight trails closely behind. A menacing figure looms in shadow, while Stefan stands triumphantly over a fallen foe. A man's eyes widen in shock as a sharp object pierces his cheek. The purple-haired warrior channels energy through his hand and declares they should take a nap. Ryfen stands defiantly in a stone corridor, facing two armored enemies advancing from the shadows. Skeletal figures scream in unison with jagged teeth bared. Ryfen lunges forward with a flaming punch, while another figure recoils midair from the impact. Ryfen strides forward through a shattered ruin and demands that someone have a look at the treasure. A lone figure stands silhouetted in a glowing archway at the top of stone steps. Ryfen rummages through a cluttered shelf and mentions coins from the Silver Age. A scroll describes a floating magic tool satchel that stores items and reduces their weight. Ryfen grins widely as he lifts a golden pendant from a small black pouch. The blue-cloaked knight clutches his head and grits his teeth in pain or frustration. Ryfen stands over a kneeling companion and boasts that his opponent was knocked out in one hit. The blue-cloaked knight stammers that he thanks the other for their presence. Ryfen grins widely and says that since he has something to say. Ryfen grins confidently while clutching a glowing blue device, wondering if he mistakenly hit someone wrong. Ryfen scratches his head and wonders aloud if something is wrong with him. Cracks spiderweb across the stone ceiling and walls snarls, while a trembling voice stammers that they are sure. Armored figures and robed individuals walk in formation through a dimly lit stone corridor. Ryfin denies being royal and questions why skill should imply nobility. Ryfin utters "huh" with a baffled expression while the pink-haired girl stares upward in shock. Ryfin admits aloud that he is not used to meeting new people, so his etiquette is not great. The red-cloaked figure strides toward a towering stone door etched with glowing blue runes. The blue-cloaked knight stands alert beside a massive barrier as the ground trembles ominously. The pink-haired girl gasps in shock while Ryfin shouts for her to stop. A monstrous beast with glowing pink eyes looms forward with its mouth open in a silent roar. Grellbeast roars with glowing eyes and cracked skin as it lunges forward and shakes the ground. The dark-haired warrior crouches with a tense expression and grips a small device. The golden-eyed warrior stares forward with a grim and determined expression. A horned demon roars atop shattered stone while one figure demands they retreat because facing such force is futile. The blue-cloaked knight shouts behind a confused companion as blue energy streaks past them. The great knight's sword pierces the twilight sky as glowing particles drift through the air. The blue-cloaked knight grips his sword hilt tightly and shouts that the answer is obvious. Grellbeast roars with glowing eyes and bared fangs, while voices demand they return to the family to prepare. The dark-haired warrior declares he will take back the great knight's sword, no matter what. A young knight in white and blue armor roars with fierce determination and shouts that everyone must raise their swords. The golden-eyed warrior glares intensely and mutters that it is foolish. The character steps forward, each footfall heavy and deliberate. A dark-haired figure watches the back of a man in a wide-brimmed hat and white coat under the dim light. A blonde figure in a wide-brimmed hat stands tense on a shadowed street, staring at something unseen. A sharp-jawed character locks eyes forward, his narrowed green eye cutting through the dim lighting. A blood-stained woman drops to her knees beside a fallen figure, reaching out in silent desperation. A dark-haired character freezes in pure shock as speed lines blast across the frame. A wild-haired figure stares ahead in disbelief, while a smaller character peers from behind amidst an ominous haze. A black-haired character fixes his gaze on a shadowed figure as the air hums with silent tension. A curly-haired character swallows hard, sweat beading on his face against a deep red backdrop. A character crouches on the stone floor as a massive plume of glowing red energy erupts upward. A woman gasps in terror as a blade slices her cheek and draws blood. A trembling hand clutches a blood-stained yellow paper charm while sweat beads on the skin around it. A figure in a wide-brimmed hat slumps beside a woman who walks away into a dim corridor. A man with glowing red eyes leans forward, demanding to know if everything is okay. A woman screams in anguish, clutching a limp boy as speed lines radiate outward to convey the shock. A young man closes his eyes and accepts a tight embrace despite the faint scratches marring his face. A man in a black coat stands amidst swirling blue energy, certain that this situation must end soon. A young woman gasps in horror as an injured person rests against her shoulder under a bright sky. A young man grins fiercely with bared teeth as blue energy crackles around him in a raw display of power. A young woman stares forward in shock, tears welling in her eyes as particles drift around her. A cloaked figure stands before a fractured dimensional rift, glowing with blue energy. A young man closes his eyes and smiles smugly, touching his temple as petals drift around him. A masked figure stands with hands on hips as spectral blue energy erupts calmly behind him. A shadowy figure screams in terror, sweat droplets flying from its face amidst vertical streaks of panic. A young boy recoils in terror, screaming that something is coming while trembling with visible shock. A young man jabs his finger at a floating black cat, shouting that it should forget its fixation. A man stands silently in an alley while another character's furious eye glares from the foreground. The elf stares with wide, glowing eyes in stunned silence as a chill runs through the air. A cloaked figure exhales sharply, muttering something under their breath amidst quiet tension. A masked figure clenches a fist amid swirling energy, declaring that the victim will pay dearly. A woman delivers a devastating uppercut that sends her opponent flying into the air with a spray of blood. The young man clenches his fist and narrows his gaze, signaling he will not hold back anymore. A boot stomps down hard on the floor, kicking up a violent spray of water and debris. The sorcerer thrusts his hand forward to unleash a blast of green energy, while talismans swirl violently around him. The elf snarls as green energy cracks violently across his hat and roars a guttural sound. A black-haired figure lunges forward with a corrupted, glowing arm extended as green energy streaks violently across the background. The black-clad warrior dashes forward through a vortex of green and red energy toward an unseen target. A masked figure unleashes a surge of crackling green energy that erupts outward with violent force. The man raises his hand wreathed in surging crimson energy, while dark tendrils coil violently around his fingers. A man stares intensely as a swirling mass of crimson energy erupts beside his face and distorts the air. A figure glares with a glowing red eye while another man screams in terror as green slime drips down his face. A cloaked figure unleashes a surging tide of crimson energy that erupts upward, while another character recoils midair above. Red and black demonic flames surge upward through a vortex of green energy, as if summoned by an unseen force. Red and black energy surges violently amid swirling green light, and erupts with explosive force. A sweating man grits his teeth and thrusts a talisman forward, shouting that he will not yield. A cloaked figure streaks through the air trailing green energy and collides with a red-black aura that erupts violently. A cloaked figure crouches low as green energy erupts around them, shouting that the attack has begun. A character stares forward with wide green eyes and bared teeth as sweat drips down their face. A black-haired man raises his arm to block an incoming strike and generates a white circular energy shield. A dark-haired fighter drives a glowing punch into the chest of a green-haired man and sends him recoiling. A green-haired character lunges forward through streaking motion lines, expression twisted in fierce determination. A masked figure unleashes a swirling vortex of green energy that propels 8 glowing talismans outward in a deadly circle. A figure in white is violently flung backward by a swirling vortex of green energy, while another character looms above. A young man stands motionless as swirling green energy erupts around him, despite the violent wind whipping through the ruined street. A monstrous eye widens in shock beneath a heavy dark mass as vertical speed lines convey sudden impact. The man clenches his fist with a manic grin as green energy violently erupts around his hand, shouting that he will crush them all. A massive green energy sphere erupts in the alley and sends a cloaked figure stumbling backward as debris scatters. Green energy surges violently across the frame in jagged, overlapping waves. The wounded fighter clenches her bloodied fist as green energy swirls violently around her and radiates raw power. The hooded figure raises his hand to summon glowing talismans swirling with green energy, declaring that an empty wagon was what they said. A woman screams in rage with her mouth wide open and teeth bared as jagged lines of energy crackle around her face. A cloaked figure raises their hand to unleash a massive surge of green energy that engulfs the surrounding ruins. A jagged green energy blade surges forward with explosive force, tearing through the air-trailing dark mist. A cloaked figure channels a massive green energy blast that surges upward and shatters the air while buildings loom in the background. A swirling mass of dark energy erupts violently against a bright green background, suggesting an explosive magical discharge. A cloaked figure crouches low as a towering wave of green energy crashes down around them while glowing characters scream across the air. A character snarls fiercely with their face contorted in rage as green energy crackles around them in a silent scream of fury. A character's glowing green eye narrows in sharp focus amid swirling motion lines as energy crackles around them. A hooded figure stands with arms outstretched as a massive sphere of green energy erupts around them. A dark figure stands at the center of a violent red and black energy explosion, surrounded by jagged motion lines. A green-haired character sweats profusely with wide, terrified eyes and gritted teeth as red streaks blur the background. A silhouetted figure stands engulfed in swirling red and black energy as someone off-screen speaks with regret. A hand reaches forward through swirling red and black energy as if grasping for something unseen, while the dark aura pulses violently. A young man grins wildly as dark red energy swirls around his outstretched hand, declaring that a deal has been made. A man thrusts his glowing fist forward and unleashes swirling crimson energy while declaring hellfire. A fist wreathed in swirling red energy pulses with violent force as dark tendrils writhe around it. A cloaked figure floats amidst swirling red and black energy as a bright cross-shaped light pierces the darkness. A cloaked figure slashes through a swirling vortex of crimson energy and sends shockwaves rippling outward. A woman screams in sheer terror with tears streaming down her face as she recoils from an unseen horror. A dark-haired man grins savagely while thrusting his fist forward as swirling crimson energy erupts violently around him. A character's eye glows with a vertical red pupil as swirling crimson energy engulfs their face and radiates terrifying power.